Have you ever noticed that the things people crave the most are the very things they can't easily have? Think about it. Whether it's luxury goods, exclusive opportunities, or even the attention of someone who carries themselves with strength and confidence, scarcity creates desire. What is rare becomes valuable. Yet so many of us live in a way that makes us endlessly available, always picking up the phone, always saying yes, always being there at the drop of a hat. And then we wonder, why don't people value us? Why do they take us for granted? The truth is simple. When you give yourself away too freely, you unintentionally teach others that your time, your energy, and your presence hold little weight. You're like a song on repeat, played so often that people stop truly listening. But imagine for a moment if you shifted your mindset. Imagine if you carried yourself like your time was gold, like your energy was priceless, like your presence was a privilege, not a guarantee. Suddenly, the dynamic changes. People lean in. They pay attention. They respect the space you occupy because they know it is not given cheaply. This isn't about arrogance. It's not about pushing people away. It's about understanding the law of value. The more selective you are with your time, the more valuable you become in the eyes of others. The world doesn't reward those who are endlessly available. It rewards those who know their worth and guard it with discipline. And that is the mindset shift that changes everything. Today, I want to challenge you to stop living as though your presence is disposable and start living as though it is the most powerful currency you own. Because the moment you stop being available to everyone, you start becoming valuable to the right ones. That's when people listen differently. That's when they respect you differently. And that's when your life begins to transform. Think about the last time you bought something that was hard to get. Maybe it was a limited edition product, concert tickets, or even an opportunity that wasn't available to everyone. Do you remember the excitement, the anticipation, and the pride you felt once you had it? That rush didn't come just from the product or the experience itself. It came from the fact that it wasn't within everyone's reach. Scarcity amplifies value. When something is rare, people are willing to wait longer, pay more, and fight harder just to get a piece of it. The same principle applies to human beings. When you are constantly available, always accessible, always saying yes, you strip away the mystery, the anticipation, and the respect that comes from your presence. Instead of being cherished, you become overlooked. Instead of being appreciated, you are taken for granted. The problem is, most people think availability equals loyalty, that saying yes to everything and everyone is the only way to show they care. They think that being constantly there will earn them love, admiration, or respect. But in reality, the opposite happens. Imagine someone who never says no, someone who always answers immediately, someone who always bends over backward to be there. At first, people may appreciate it, but soon enough they stop valuing it because it's expected, it's predictable, it's guaranteed. And as human beings, we don't treasure what is guaranteed. We treasure what is earned. Picture a diamond. Why is it so valuable? Because it's rare. It's not something you stumble upon on the street every day. Its scarcity drives up its worth. Now think about air. Air is essential for life, more important than diamonds. But because it's always available, always around you, you rarely stop to appreciate it. People treat your time and energy the same way. If you make yourself like air, always there, always giving, never scarce, they will forget your worth, no matter how important you are to them. But if you carry yourself like a diamond, rare, intentional, selective, people will see your presence as something valuable, something to respect, something to earn. When you are constantly available, you unintentionally communicate something dangerous, that your time has no price. You're telling people without words that anyone can have access to you whenever they want. And when people feel like your time costs nothing, they treat it like it's worth nothing. Respect is born when people know they can't have you whenever they choose, that they must value your attention, your focus, your presence. Think about leaders, visionaries, or people of influence. They are not accessible to everyone at every moment, and that's exactly why people cherish the moments they do get. Their scarcity makes every interaction more meaningful. Now, scarcity doesn't mean disappearing. It doesn't mean ignoring people or being cold. It means being intentional. It means you don't just hand out your energy like free samples at a store. You decide where, when, and to whom you give your time. You choose to show up where it matters most, in moments that leave an impact, instead of diluting yourself by being everywhere all the time. There's a profound difference between being supportive and being constantly available. The supportive person knows when to step in, how to show up, and when to pull back. The constantly available person never pulls back, and as a result, never commands respect. It's human psychology to want what we can't always have. The more you restrict access, the more people value it. This doesn't just apply to relationships, it applies to your career, your friendships, your opportunities. Think of the top professionals in any field. They're not constantly accessible to everyone who wants their time. They are selective, intentional, and because of that, their advice, their presence, their input carries enormous weight. When they do give their time, people hang on to every word. Contrast that with someone who is always around, no matter how smart or talented they are. People eventually stop paying attention because the rarity factor is gone. If you're always available, you're not giving people a reason to prioritize you. Why should they make the effort to value you when you've already made yourself so easy to reach, so easy to dismiss? On the other hand, when you respect your own time and create a sense of scarcity, people start adjusting to your standards. They become more mindful of when and how they reach out to you because they don't want to waste the limited access they have. You shift the power dynamic. Instead of chasing validation, you attract respect. Instead of running after people, people start leaning toward you. And here's the deeper truth. Scarcity forces people to reflect on your importance. When you're not constantly there, they have the space to miss you, to think about what you bring to their life, to recognize your impact. Too much presence breeds complacency. Too much availability kills curiosity. Scarcity, however, builds desire, respect, and appreciation. It creates a contrast that makes people truly see your worth. So ask yourself, are you living like air, available everywhere, unnoticed because you're always there? Or are you living like a diamond, rare, intentional, and deeply valued every time you show up? The answer to that question may be the very reason people either take you for granted or treat you with the respect you deserve. Respect always begins at the point where you decide how much you respect yourself. The way people treat you is often a reflection of the rules you've silently allowed them to play by. When you fail to set boundaries, you are giving others a blank check to draw as much as they want from your time, your energy, and your emotional resources. And here's the harsh reality. People will almost always take as much as you're willing to give. It's not necessarily because they're bad or selfish. It's because human nature gravitates toward ease, toward what is accessible, toward what comes without effort. If you don't create a line, if you don't build a standard, others won't magically respect limits you've never put in place. Think about a home with no fence, no locks, no doors. Anyone could walk in at any time, and eventually, people will. Some will come with good intentions, but others will come to take advantage. Now imagine a home with a clear fence, a gate, and a door that only opens when you decide it does. That home is protected, valued, and respected. Your life works the same way. Boundaries are not walls that keep the world out. They are gates that regulate who enters and on what terms. Without them, you invite chaos. With them, you create order, respect, and peace. Too often, people confuse boundaries with selfishness. They think that saying no is cruel, that turning down requests makes them unkind. But the truth is the opposite. Saying yes to everything means you're slowly eroding your own strength, your own clarity, your own ability to show up fully where it truly matters. Boundaries are not about rejection, they're about direction. They guide your energy toward what is meaningful and away from what is draining. And when people see that you guard your time with discipline, they don't interpret it as selfish, they interpret it as self-respect. Consider how you feel about people who have strong standards. You might not always like their rules, but you respect them. You adjust to meet them, because they're not bending for everyone. Whether it's a leader in business, a mentor, or even someone in your personal life, the people who earn your deepest respect are usually the ones who demand it through their own discipline. They don't explain their worth, they demonstrate it. They don't beg for respect, they command it by showing what they will and will not accept. When you live without standards, you become like an open field with no pathways. People trample through in every direction, and soon there's nothing left but worn ground. But when you create standards, you carve out a road, a structure, a direction that others must follow. Boundaries create clarity, not just for you, but for the people in your life. They know where you stand. They know what's acceptable and what's not, and in that clarity, they find respect. One of the biggest reasons people struggle with boundaries is fear. Fear of being disliked, fear of disappointing others, fear of being abandoned. But think about it. What is the cost of never setting boundaries? You might be liked, but only because you've made yourself a doormat. You might avoid disappointing others, but you'll live in constant disappointment with yourself. You might keep people around, but they'll stay not out of respect, but out of convenience. True respect is never born from availability. It's born from the courage to say, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, and this is what I will no longer tolerate. Boundaries are also deeply tied to the standards you set for your own life. If you don't set standards, you accept whatever comes your way. You accept half-hearted relationships, mediocre opportunities, and disrespectful behavior, all because you never defined what you deserved. Setting standards is like raising the bar. When you do it, people either rise to meet it or they fall away. Both outcomes serve you. If they rise, you are surrounded by stronger, more respectful connections. If they fall away, you've filtered out what was never worthy of your time in the first place. Every time you raise your standards, you teach people something important. You teach them how to treat you. If you're always accessible, you teach them you don't value your time. If you allow constant disrespect, you teach them your worth can be diminished. But when you create clear boundaries, when you hold to your standards, even when it's uncomfortable, you teach people that your presence is not a given. It is a privilege. And privileges are never abused by those who truly understand their value. Think about the people who are remembered with reverence, the ones whose names carry weight, whose presence is admired. None of them lived without standards. They didn't hand out their time like candy, and they didn't bend for everyone's demands. Instead, they drew lines, they raised expectations, and in doing so, they elevated not only themselves, but also the people around them. That's the irony of boundaries. When you enforce them, you don't just protect yourself, you inspire others to rise. Boundaries are the foundation of respect, and respect is the foundation of influence. When people know you respect yourself enough to guard your time and energy, they start valuing those things as well. But it starts with you. You can't wait for others to suddenly decide you're worthy of respect. You must decide it first. You must set the tone, establish the standard, and show through your actions what you allow and what you don't. So ask yourself, where in your life have you let the gates stay wide open? Where have you said yes when you should have said no? Where have you lowered your standards just to keep the peace, just to be liked, just to avoid conflict? And then ask yourself this, how much longer can you afford to live like that? Because the day you begin setting boundaries is the day you start reclaiming your self-respect. And the moment you raise your standards is the moment the world begins to rise to meet them. Time is the one resource you will never get back. Money can be lost and earned again. Opportunities may slip away, but new ones will appear. Even relationships, as painful as it can be to lose them, can be rebuilt or replaced over time. But the minutes of your life, once they are spent, they are gone forever. And yet, too many people live as if their time is an endless supply. They give it away, recklessly, pouring it into the wrong people, the wrong pursuits, and the wrong distractions, all because they don't see time for what it really is. Currency. In fact, it is the most valuable currency you'll ever own. How you spend it determines the kind of life you build, the success you achieve, and the respect you command. When you treat your time like loose change, people around you will treat it the same way. If you are always available, always answering calls, always saying yes to obligations that don't serve you, you send a clear message that your time is cheap. But when you begin to guard your hours with intention, when you decide to invest your time the same way you'd invest money, carefully, strategically, with a focus on growth, you elevate not only yourself but also the way others perceive you. People admire those who value their time because deep down, everyone wishes they had the courage to do the same. Think about how most of us live. We say yes to meetings we don't need to attend. We entertain conversations that drain us instead of fuel us. We scroll for hours on screens, consuming content that adds nothing to our goals or our growth. We spend our days pleasing others, making sure everyone else is comfortable, all the while neglecting the one investment that matters most, ourselves. And then we wonder why we feel unfulfilled, underappreciated, or stuck in the same place year after year. The answer isn't complicated. It's simply that we've been spending our currency on liabilities instead of assets. Imagine for a moment that every hour of your day is worth $100. Would you hand that money out to every stranger, every distraction, every meaningless obligation? Would you let people take it without giving anything back? Of course not. You'd guard it, you'd think before you spent it. You'd look for ways to invest it so that it grows into something greater. That is exactly how you need to view your time. Every hour you give away is an investment. The question is, are you investing in something that compounds, or are you throwing it into something that drains? When you stop spending time on pleasing others, you free yourself to start investing in growth. Growth is reading the book that sharpens your thinking. Growth is practicing the skill that makes you more valuable in your field. Growth is building the discipline that makes your body, your mind, and your spirit stronger. Growth is surrounding yourself with people who challenge you to rise higher instead of dragging you lower. These are the places where time multiplies. Because the hour you spend on growth today doesn't just vanish, it pays you back tomorrow in opportunities, confidence, and influence. The truth is, many people struggle with this shift because they're addicted to validation. They think that saying yes, being available, and pleasing others will earn them approval. But approval is a trap. It keeps you busy, but never fulfilled. People may like you for being endlessly available, but they won't respect you for it. Respect comes when you are disciplined with your time, when you are courageous enough to say no, and when you demonstrate that your energy is not something to be wasted. And here's the paradox. When you stop pleasing everyone, when you stop giving your time to everything, people begin to respect you more. They realize your attention is not easy to earn, and that makes it valuable. They approach you differently. They show up more prepared, more intentional, because they know your time has a price. You stop being just another option, and you start being seen as an asset. Think of the people you admire most. They are not the ones constantly running around, drained, exhausted, trying to meet everyone's expectations. They are the ones who seem in control of their schedule, who prioritize what truly matters, who say no without apology. Their time feels precious because they treat it as such. You can sense it when you're with them. You know you are in the presence of someone who values themselves, and that forces you to value them too. When you shift your mindset to view time as currency, you start making better choices. You stop chasing shallow validation and start building lasting value. You stop overextending yourself for people who don't appreciate you, and you start pouring energy into projects, skills, and relationships that will elevate you. Every hour becomes intentional, every day becomes purposeful, and slowly your life begins to transform. There's a saying that goes, show me your calendar and I'll show you your future. Because your calendar is a reflection of your investments. If it's filled with obligations that drain you, people who disrespect you, and activities that keep you stagnant, then your future will be a mirror of that. But if your calendar is filled with growth, learning, meaningful connections, and intentional rest, then your future will expand beyond what you ever thought possible. So ask yourself right now, where is your time going? Who or what is consuming your hours without giving anything back? Where are you making deposits that bring no return? And more importantly, where could you be investing instead? Because the truth is, every yes you give is also a no to something else. Every time you say yes to pleasing someone who doesn't value you, you are saying no to your own growth. Every time you say yes to distractions, you are saying no to your own potential. It's time to flip that equation. It's time to start saying yes to yourself. Yes to your growth. Yes to your peace. Yes to your future. And when you do, when you begin to see your time as the precious currency it truly is, you'll stop chasing validation and start building value. You'll stop being drained by availability and start being empowered by intentionality. And that shift, that single decision to treat your time like gold, will change everything about the way you live and the way others see you. There's a difference between being around and being remembered. Too many people confuse proximity with presence. They believe that simply being there, showing up in the room, hanging around people, making themselves constantly available, will somehow make them valuable. But presence isn't about how often you are seen. It's about the impact you create when you are. Presence is the energy you bring, the influence you carry, the impression you leave behind that lingers long after you've gone. Proximity is physical. Presence is psychological, emotional, and even spiritual. Proximity might get you into the room, but presence is what makes people sit up, notice, and remember you. Think about the moments in your life when someone truly impacted you. Maybe it was a teacher, a mentor, a leader, or even a friend. Chances are, it wasn't about how often they were around, it was about the way they made you feel when they were there. Maybe they spoke words that shifted your thinking. Maybe they carried themselves with such conviction that you couldn't ignore them. Maybe they simply listened in a way that made you feel seen. That's presence. And presence holds far more power than proximity ever will. In our world today, too many people chase visibility. They think if they're always posting, always talking, always showing up, they'll become valuable. But noise is not the same as influence. You can flood the space around you with your voice and still be ignored if you don't carry presence. Presence is what makes silence louder than words, what makes a single glance more powerful than hours of conversation. Presence is rare, and because of that, it's respected. So what creates presence? It starts with inner work. When you know who you are, when you are aligned with your values, when you walk into a room carrying clarity instead of insecurity, people feel it before you even open your mouth. Presence is less about what you do and more about who you are. It's the confidence in your posture, the calm in your tone, the discipline in your energy. Presence says, I don't need to beg for your attention because I am whole whether you give it or not. That energy is magnetic. People are drawn to it not because it's loud, but because it's grounded and undeniable. Presence also requires intentionality. It means that when you give your time to someone, you give it fully. You don't sit across from them while scrolling your phone. You don't half listen while planning what you'll say next. You show up with your attention sharp, your energy focused, your respect evident. People notice when they are in the presence of someone who is truly there. They remember how you made them feel, and that memory becomes a seed of respect. Proximity can't do that. Only presence can. Another layer of presence is the value you bring into spaces. Anyone can take up space, but not everyone can elevate it. When you walk into a meeting, do you drain the room with complaints and distractions, or do you lift it with ideas, clarity, and solutions? When you enter someone's life, do you add weight to their burdens, or do you bring strength, encouragement, and perspective? Presence is built when people know that your involvement shifts the atmosphere in a positive way. They don't just notice you, they appreciate you, they anticipate you. That anticipation is a marker of value. Think about leaders who command respect. They don't have to be in every room or at every table. Yet when they do show up, everyone knows the conversation changes. Their presence reshapes the environment. Why? Because they have invested in becoming valuable, not just available. They don't rely on constant proximity to maintain influence. Their presence is enough to create a lasting impression. That is the difference between chasing attention and commanding it. Presence also comes from restraint. When you're always around, always inserting yourself, always trying to be noticed, you dilute your impact. But when you are selective with your appearances, when you choose moments of true significance, your presence carries weight. People pay attention because they know you don't waste your time, and therefore they shouldn't waste yours. This scarcity, combined with impact, builds presence that resonates far beyond physical proximity. There's also a timeless truth about presence. It doesn't just happen when you're physically there. True presence lingers. It's in the way someone remembers your words when they face a challenge. It's in the way your example silently guides them even when you're not around. It's in the standard you set that continues to influence long after you've left. That's the mark of real presence. It outlives the moment. Proximity ends when you walk out of the room. Presence continues in the minds and hearts of the people you touched. You must ask yourself, are you filling space or are you shaping it? Are you confusing being seen with being remembered? Because presence doesn't come from chasing attention, it comes from embodying value. And value is created through discipline, growth, and self-respect. When you pour into yourself, when you develop skills, when you master your energy, when you set boundaries, you naturally build a presence that speaks louder than any words ever could. Presence is not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the voice that people recall when the room is silent. It's not about being everywhere all the time. It's about being so intentional in your impact that even in your absence, your influence remains. Proximity will get you noticed for a moment, but presence will earn you respect for a lifetime. So stop trying to be available everywhere, to everyone. Stop thinking that constant proximity will make you matter. Instead, focus on cultivating presence. Walk into spaces with clarity. Speak when your words add weight. Show up where your energy is meaningful. Leave people better than you found them. When you do this, you won't need to chase attention. Your presence will demand it. And that presence will build respect, influence, and legacy in ways proximity never could. Most people confuse simply being around with actually making an impact. They believe if they're always there, if they never miss a gathering, if they constantly make themselves visible, they'll be remembered and respected. But the truth is, proximity alone doesn't create value. You can stand next to greatness and still remain invisible. You can spend every day around people and still leave no lasting mark. Presence is not about how often you show up. It's about the impression you leave when you do. Presence is powerful because it speaks beyond words. Think of the moments when someone walked into a room and everything shifted. The energy, the attention, the atmosphere. They didn't have to announce themselves, and they didn't have to fight for attention. People simply felt it. That's presence. It's an aura built not by noise, but by depth. Presence is the weight of your character, your confidence, and your clarity. It's when your silence says more than someone else's endless talking. The mistake so many people make is thinking that proximity equals importance. They chase visibility. They flood spaces with their presence, thinking that quantity of appearances will translate into respect. But the truth is, being everywhere all the time only dilutes your impact. Familiarity without value eventually breeds indifference. People stop noticing you because you're always there. You blend into the background like wallpaper, present but overlooked. Presence, on the other hand, makes you unforgettable, because it's not about how much you're around, it's about how deeply you affect people when you are. Presence begins with inner alignment. You cannot fake it because presence is energy, and energy reveals truth. If you walk into a room insecure, desperate to be noticed, that's exactly what people feel. If you walk in grounded, confident in who you are and what you stand for, that's what people sense too. Presence comes from knowing yourself so well that you don't need validation. You don't need to prove your worth with noise or with constant availability. You carry a quiet authority that others respect without you demanding it. And presence is not about grandeur, it's about intention. When you give your time to someone, do you give it fully? Do you listen with focus? Do you bring value to the moment? Or do you just occupy space? People don't remember how many times you showed up. They remember how they felt when you did. Did you inspire them? Did you challenge them? Did you encourage them? Did you leave them better than you found them? That's the essence of presence. It multiplies value in the space it touches. Presence also lives in the discipline of restraint. Those who have true presence don't feel the need to always be the loudest, to dominate every conversation, or to be seen in every place. They choose their moments carefully. They let silence work for them. They allow space for others to lean in, to listen more intently, because they don't give themselves away cheaply. And when they do speak, when they do act, it carries weight. That restraint is what makes their presence more powerful than constant proximity ever could. Think about history's most respected figures. They didn't need to be everywhere to be remembered. Their presence was so impactful that a single speech, a single gesture, or a single act left an imprint on generations. Their power wasn't in proximity, it was in the lasting echo of their presence. Proximity fades the moment you leave the room. Presence lingers. It follows people into their decisions, their actions, their thoughts. It leaves behind a legacy of influence. Presence is also about the value you bring into the room. Anyone can show up, but not everyone can elevate the space they enter. Do you walk into environments making them heavier with negativity, complaints, and noise? Or do you bring solutions, perspective, encouragement, and clarity? Presence is built when people know that your involvement makes a difference. When you arrive, things improve. When you speak, people listen. When you leave, people feel the absence of what you contributed. That is what separates someone with presence from someone who's merely nearby. Another truth about presence is that it requires growth. You cannot carry presence if you have nothing within you. Presence is the overflow of what you've built in silence, your discipline, your knowledge, your strength, your character. It shows in how you stand, how you speak, how you handle challenges. People feel when they are in the presence of someone who has done the work on themselves. They don't need to announce it. It radiates from them naturally. That's why presence is rare. Most people spend so much time chasing proximity that they forget to build depth. Presence also demands scarcity. If you are constantly accessible, if people can reach you at any moment without effort, you lose the impact of your presence. It becomes normal, expected, and eventually undervalued. But when you are intentional with your appearances, when you are selective with your access, your presence carries more weight. People don't take it for granted. They anticipate it. They respect it. They treasure it. The more rare the access, the higher the value of the presence. So you must ask yourself, are you just filling space, or are you creating impact? Are you relying on proximity to make you feel significant, or are you cultivating presence that makes you unforgettable? Because the truth is, proximity might get you noticed for a moment, but presence will earn you respect for a lifetime. Presence is not about being everywhere. It's about being deeply felt wherever you are. When you build presence, you don't need to chase attention. Attention comes to you. You don't need to beg for respect. People give it freely. And you don't need to constantly prove your worth. Your presence proves it for you. This is the difference between living as someone who's always around and living as someone who is impossible to ignore. Proximity fades quickly. Presence endures. And when you focus on building presence, you stop being just another person in the room. You become the one everyone remembers long after the room is empty. Not everyone deserves access to you, and the sooner you understand this, the sooner your life begins to change. Too often people make the mistake of offering themselves to everyone. They hand out their time, their energy, their focus, like it costs nothing. They believe that saying yes to everyone will make them more loved, more respected, more valuable. But the truth is, when you make yourself too available, you lose value in the eyes of others. The more people can access you without effort, the less they appreciate you. Just like anything in life, the rarer something is, the more it is treasured, and that's why selective access is one of the most powerful tools you have to elevate yourself from being just an option to becoming an asset. Think of the difference between an option and an asset. An option is something people choose only when it's convenient, when nothing better is available. It's replaceable, disposable, and not truly prioritized. An asset, on the other hand, is something people protect, value, and depend on. An asset adds weight, strength, and meaning. In relationships, in careers, and in life, you must decide which one you want to be. If you want to be an asset, you can't be available to everyone at every moment. You must be selective. You must decide who gets access, how much, and under what conditions. That's not arrogance, it's self-respect. The people you admire most, the ones you respect deeply, are not the ones you can reach anytime you want. Their time feels earned, their attention feels special, their presence feels valuable because it's not handed out freely. And because of that, people show up differently when they are with them. They prepare more, they listen more carefully, they respect the interaction more deeply. That's the psychology of selective access. It forces others to recognize your value because they know it isn't unlimited. Selective access is not about pushing people away. It's about protecting your energy and ensuring that what you give goes to the right places. Not everyone should have the same level of you. Some people drain, some inspire. Some people distract, some elevate. If you don't filter, you end up pouring yourself into everyone, including those who don't deserve it, leaving nothing left for those who do. Selective access is how you create balance, focus, and impact. It allows you to give your best to the relationships, opportunities, and goals that matter most, instead of scattering your energy everywhere. Think about the way society values exclusivity. When something is hard to get, people chase it harder. When something is behind a velvet rope, people line up to experience it, not because it's always better, but because it's scarce. Your life works the same way. When you stop giving yourself away cheaply, when you start treating your time and attention as a privilege instead of a guarantee, people begin to value you differently. They lean in, they show gratitude. They stop taking you for granted. Selective access also forces people to meet you at a higher standard. When you give unrestricted access, people assume they can treat you however they want because you'll always be there. But when you are selective, they realize that their behavior matters. They understand they can lose access if they disrespect your time or take you lightly. Suddenly they show up with more respect because they know your time is not a given. This shift moves you from being someone they assume will always be available to someone they know they must earn. Of course, selective access requires courage. It means saying no when it would be easier to say yes. It means disappointing some people who want more of you than they deserve. It means cutting ties with relationships that only drain and never give, and that can be uncomfortable. But ask yourself, what's the cost of giving everyone full access? What happens when you allow everyone into your space, no matter how they treat you? You end up exhausted, unappreciated, and undervalued. And that is far worse than the temporary discomfort of saying no. When you choose to be selective, you create a different kind of power, magnetism. People are drawn to what they can't always have. They admire those who set standards, those who protect their time, those who are intentional with their energy. It sends a clear message: I know my worth and I refuse to let anyone diminish it. That kind of strength is rare, and because it's rare, it commands respect. This principle applies everywhere. In your career, being selective with your time makes you stand out. You're not in every meeting, but when you are, you contribute at a higher level. In friendships, you're not at every gathering, but when you show up, people feel the difference. In relationships, you don't answer every call instantly, but when you give your attention, it's full, intentional, and meaningful. The scarcity of your access makes people treasure it instead of overlooking it. The truth is, you can't be available to everyone and still be valuable to yourself. Selective access is about protecting the very things that make you powerful. Your time, your focus, your energy. It's about pouring into your growth so that when you do show up, you bring strength, clarity, and value. It's about ensuring that the people who get your best are the ones who have earned it. That's how you shift from being an option that people choose casually to an asset that people respect deeply. So ask yourself, who has access to you right now? Who drains your time without appreciation? Who takes your presence for granted? And who truly deserves more of you but gets less because you've been too busy giving yourself to the wrong people? The answers to those questions reveal whether you're living as an option or as an asset. The moment you start being selective is the moment everything shifts. You stop chasing approval, and approval starts chasing you. You stop giving your energy to those who don't value it, and you start attracting those who do. You stop being someone people assume will always be there, and you become someone they feel privileged to experience. That's the power of selective access. It doesn't just change how others see you, it changes how you see yourself. And when you begin to see yourself as an asset, the world has no choice but to do the same. Every truth we've explored comes down to this. Value is not something others hand to you, it's something you decide to embody. If you make yourself endlessly available, if you pour your energy into pleasing everyone, you will always end up empty, overlooked, and undervalued. But the moment you recognize your worth, the moment you choose to protect your time, set your standards, and give selective access, you shift everything. You stop being a background option and you become an undeniable asset. Being valuable means people can't treat you lightly. It means your presence carries weight. It means when you show up, it matters. And that doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you respect yourself enough to stop giving yourself away to everyone, everywhere, all the time. Scarcity builds desire, boundaries build respect. Intentional presence builds impact. Selective access builds value. The world doesn't respect those who are constantly available. The world respects those who know their worth and act like it. And here's the truth, people can only value you at the level you value yourself. If you want them to treat you differently, you must treat yourself differently first. So make the choice, stop being available to everyone and start being valuable to yourself. Guard your time, protect your energy, invest in your growth. Step into every room with the weight of someone who knows their worth. When you do, you'll find that the world adjusts. People will rise to meet your standards. Respect will no longer be something you chase, it will be something you naturally command. Remember this, availability is cheap, but value is priceless. Choose to be valuable, not available. And when you do, everything in your life, your relationships, your career, your confidence will begin to shift. Not because others change, but because you finally did.